Well, it was a great experience considering what we lived through in Carroll County. It didn't offer a whole lot. It didn't give us a whole lot, but they took a lot. But we made it through because we were determined people to make it through the crisis that we were going through as we were growing up as young guys and girls in Carroll County. The county didn't offer us very much because we had the old school buses that you had to push off the road and push on the road sometime. You know, it was just a lot of things that we could have been better, but it wasn't. But I lived in Sykesville, up on Oklahoma Hill, down in the old schoolhouse that's out there on the wall. I was born and raised there. And we walked from up there to the train station in Sykesville on Main Street just to catch the bus. So if you missed the bus, you either went back home or you better find a way to get to school if you knew what mom and dad was going to do to you. But so you didn't miss the bus too many days. I'll tell you that now. But other than that, it was rough living because we had nothing to offer to us in Sykesville area. I mean, it was plenty of things there, but it wasn't offered to the black folks in Sykesville. And you either had to take it, make the best of it, and which we did. Most of us had children and sisters and brothers that went to college. My sister went to college. My brother and I didn't, but it was our fault that we didn't, but we didn't go. But then we go to Johnsville. It was our first school was in Johnsville. And we stayed there until, seventh grade. Then we came to Robert Moton. And life was great. It wasn't a millionaire, but we had stuff. We had things that we did and made the best of everything that we had. But we wasn't anything, a whole lot given to you. You had to earn it, or you work for it. And we just learned how to get along with each other and how to make things work for each other so we could all wind up on top with something good to happen for us. And that's when I met Billy Horsey. Because the main thing, we didn't have nothing to travel in, so when I was in the 40s and the 50s, half our parents didn't even have cars.
Oh, we walked.
You went to go somewhere, you walked.
We footed.
My mother never had a car. We never had a car in my family until I was 17 years old. We didn't have transportation. We had to walk everywhere you wanted to go, or you ride a bicycle, got old enough to get a bicycle.
You lived in the big city of Sykesville.
Right, the big city of Sykesville that didn't have nothing. Didn't have nothing to offer us.
I lived way out in the country, so there was no place to walk to.
Yeah, well, it was but almost as bad because there wasn't nothing in there other than the grocery store and the post office that we could go to. You know, we weren't allowed to go in a lot of the stores. If your parents weren't with you, you didn't go in the stores unless your parents were with you. Mm-hmm. You know, even the grocery store sometimes, if you went in the evening, you weren't allowed to go in there in the evening after 4 o'clock unless your parents was with you.
Oh, okay.
You know.
Harris's clothing store.
Right, then there were 2 grocery stores and 1 clothes store and a hardware store. And then you had the post office.
Only one type shoe.
Right.
We call them broke hands.
Yeah, I was going to say I was in Carroll County.
Well, I got to add to that. My grandfather had Sykesville College Road.
Oh, did it?
Yep, and my father and I did the picking up and the dumping.
Yeah, well, he did.
Yeah, my grandfather, Jim Norris, had the first one in Sykesville.
Mm-hmm.
With a horse and a wagon.
Yeah.
And that time, Sykesville was a dirt road right up through Main Street, was all dirt. This was like 1945. I was 6 years old. I'd guide the horses while Dad would throw the trash on it. And we went on up around where the school's at now and back down past where the cemetery is now. Yeah. And then go ahead on in and dump it on the property, my grandfather's property in the back. Because back then, they burnt mostly everything. Everything could be burnt up. Yeah. Now you can't burn nothing. But back then you could burn up anything that was burned, you put it in there and burn it, Yeah. But we had the first route down through there through Sykesville itself. And But after that, we turned it over, and some other guy came in town with a little pickup truck and took it over.
Yeah.
But I know we had it for about, I was 6, 7, 8. I was 10 years old before we turned it over. So we had it about 5 or 6 years. My grandfather had it, but I never saw nothing from it. He never, Granddad didn't pay me nothing. No.
So when you talk about education,
Well, that went on even up in our class. When we went in the 50s, we were getting used books from the white
From
schools.
Westminster High School.
They was bringing into our school. Some of them didn't even have all the pages in them. We were still had to use them. And that's part of, we, like he said, we didn't get anything that was going to really push us to make us really want to stay in school and fight, except your inward, your parents and your church and your families around you is what pushed you to go stay in school and go to school back in that was in the 50s.
yeah.
So,
But it gets back to
they didn't open the schools up until the late 60s when people started to get the good stuff.
But it goes back to
Well, that went on even up in our class. When we went in the 50s, we were getting used books from the white
From
schools.
Westminster High School.
They was bringing into our school. Some of them didn't even have all the pages in them. We were still had to use them. And that's part of, we, like he said, we didn't get anything that was going to really push us to make us really want to stay in school and fight, except your inward, your parents and your church and your families around you is what pushed you to go stay in school and go to school back in that was in the 50s.
Yeah.
So,
But it gets back to
they didn't open the schools up until the late 60s when people started to get the good stuff.
But it goes back
They
to
didn't compare it to most, our school didn't compare, but we was determined that we were gonna be up against everything that the other schools had, like sports and stuff. We were like number one half of the time, between number one and number two in most of the sports that was in Carroll County at that time. And we were going from the early 50s to the last closed up the school. Our students maintained first and second areas in this whole system all the way through school. So it was a lot here, but like you said, it wasn't a lot offered to us.
Right.
We had to grab out at it and go get it, if you wanted it,
Since then, I've been
Well, my
retired.
first job from high school was construction company with Collins Brothers. We worked there for 4 years. Then I came out from there and I went into house cleaning. I worked for a doctor, and I stayed there about 3 years. Then I left there in 1960. I went to Hates Funeral Home, and I spent 46 years there at Hates Funeral Home. I just retired 5 years ago. So it was an uphill battle all the way, because you never got the job to pay you what you were worth. Back then, you never stayed on a high scale. You always on a lower scale than the top man, or the better man, or the white man that was in front of you. You were always below that. But like you say, you made the best of it. You knew you had to work. Back in those days, you didn't have no choice. When you come out of school, you had to find a job. Of course, your parents weren't going to have you sitting around the house. And I just kept on going until I finally wound up at the Hates Funeral Home there in 1960. I went there part-time in 1958, went full-time in 59. I buried my dad in 1960, and I've been rolling on that up until 2000. I retired in 2000. I had 46 and a half years in there. I also worked for the Carroll County Board of Education at the same time that I was working at the funeral home. I worked at the Carroll County Board of Education for 23 and a half years. So I worked 2 full-time jobs for at least 25 years. And I have no regret. I've enjoyed every one of them. I like both jobs. And to this day, I have no complaints about what we did, how we did it. It was always a cherish to go to work. I never had a problem going to work. So, it was a lot of things you had to accept. But I tell you, once I got into that funeral home, it's like doors just opened up. I wound up with a car cleaning business for about 10 years. Everything just kept moving. And I was doing all these jobs. I had a grave digging job. I had 2 sons and my brother. We had graves we dug in the evenings between sundown, between sunup and sundown. We dug graves at 5 different cemeteries in Harrod County and Carroll County. So, you know, it's been a roll, and I have no complaint. I've enjoyed every day of my life.
Okay. So as an African American here in Carroll County, you've experienced a lot of difficulties in life. But all in all, you would think that you were successful
We made it.
in your lives.
Yeah, we made it. Yep, we made it. Yeah. But you had to have that determination to make it, you know. You wasn't nobody give you nothing. You just had to make up your mind that this is where you were going. You looked at where your father and your mother were. You say, I'm going from here. And that's what you did. I know that's what I did. Because I knew where my parents were. And my dad was not the best dad. But he kept us in line, that's for sure. It was with us. That's the same way it was when I first got married, my first wife. We couldn't find a place in Carroll County or Harrod County to live in. She was from Harrod County. So I wound up living in Baltimore County, you know. But hometown was always Carroll County because that's where I was 26 when I left home, you know. So I would spend most of my life right there.
Gertrude, you want to add anything else?
I guess not.
Hank Norris, born in Sykesville, Oklahoma Hill Schoolhouse, 1939, May 6th. Just turned 83.